Hey guys, so I had an interesting question come up about how to transition from beginner method to full PLL. And the simplest advice is to progress from what you already know. So the beginner method I'm referring to is they make their cross, then they do their corners, then their middle edges, then they get back to their cross on the next layer, then they have an algorithm called soon, which actually you may have to do it repeatedly, but will get everything to orient. Then they have another algorithm that once they get a set of headlights, it gets all of headlights on all the sides. And then once they have a solved bar, then they continuously use it and it may solve it. The thing here is you're trying to progress to what's known as two-look last layer, which is essentially where you do the last layer, you orient everything in one algorithm, and then you permute everything in one algorithm. There's a step in between beginner method and two-look last layer, known as four-look last layer. The reason this differs is because, like I said, in beginner method, you may have to do some of these algorithms on the top multiple times. It doesn't necessarily solve everything in 4 looks. So you want to progress to 4-look last layer first. In the case of PLL, you want to go from multiple PLL or beginner method to 2-look PLL and then 1-look PLL. So starting from what you already know, the headlight algorithm that they usually use is, I guess I should do yellow on top since that's what everybody is used to. Yeah, I saw green, so you'll get the idea. So essentially it's R prime, U, L prime, U2, R, U prime, R prime, U2, R, L, U prime. That's their headlight algorithm. What you need to know here is that this is actually a J permutation. It's one of the 21 PLLs. So the way you recognize this is you have a solved bar on one side with a matching bar here, and on the other side you have these two that need to swap. This bar needs to swap with this bar. It looks kind of like an L, but the way it gets its J shape is if you imagine you're swapping these two corners. So if you imagine an arrow going to each one of these, and you're swapping these two edges, you imagine an arrow going between these two, you get kind of a bent shape, which would be the J perm. So with the bottom of the J on the left side, and you're looking at your headlights, R, U, L prime, U2, R, U, R prime, U2, R, L, U prime, solves it. If it were any other case, let's say you didn't have your headlights, if you did it, you would get headlights on one side, you'd have to put that headlights on this side, then do it again, gets headlights on all the sides, and then you would have your last algorithm to cycle through. Notice how I had to do that in 3 looks, which is why this is not a 2-look PLL, or a 1-look PLL. So in this case, there's also another J perm. You know version 1 with the bottom of it on the left side, but there's one with the bottom of it on the right side. It actually kind of looks like this. There we go. So now we have here this bar and this bar. We're swapping these two, or swapping these two corners and these two edges. I just did a different algorithm that's faster, but to save on what you have to learn, as a beginner, what you can do is use the one that you already know, just the mirror version. So again, my headlights are on the front, so instead of starting with an R prime, start with an L. Instead of doing a U after that, do a U prime. You're doing the exact mirror version of this algorithm. So it looks like this. It'll solve that case. That's the only difference between the two. So based on what you already know, since you know the first J perm, using a mirror will make the second J perm. The other algorithm that you're using is the one that cycles these edges. Okay, it usually looks like M2, U, M, U2, M prime, U, M2. Notice how it didn't solve that. You'd have to do it again, and it would solve it. The reason it doesn't solve this is because there's actually 2 versions of U perm. That's what this is, a U permutation. One of them cycles everything counterclockwise, the other cycles it clockwise. So in this case, where we were, if I cycle everything counterclockwise with the algorithm that's taught in the beginner's method, white is going to go to this side. I need it to go clockwise. Well, the good news for you is you don't actually have to know the mirror version, you just have to change 2 little moves in the one that you already know. You still start with your M2, But instead of doing an U, do a U prime instead. Continue with your M, your U2, your M prime, and here, instead of doing another U, just do U prime again. Then do M2. So the first one is M2, U, M, U2, M prime, U, M2. The second one is M2, U prime, M, U2, M prime, U prime, M2. 2 small moves is all you have to change in that one. So you went from knowing 2 PLLs to now you know 4 PLLs. You know both versions of J perm and both versions of U perm. The next one I recommend learning is the Y perm. And the reason I recommend learning this one is because of the fact that if you have a case where you have no headlights on any side, like this, a Y perm, no matter what side you do it on, will instantly give you headlights or pairs on every single side. In this case, I jumped straight to a U perm, which you could then just solve. The other reason that I recommend learning Y perm is the fact that hidden within it is a way to learn another permutation on top of 2 OLLs. So we'll start with the Y perm. What you're going to do is you're going to turn your front layer. When you turn your front layer, you're going to pay attention to this little pair. You're going to lift up this right layer, and you're going to take this pair, and you're going to insert it. Then you're going to move the top layer, which is a U prime, and you're going to take that pair right back out. Then you're going to undo your F turn. That is the first part. Notice how it makes this little T shape. So if I were to keep doing it again, like that, and if I did it one more time, we get to this shape. If I do it again, I'm back to where I started. So doing the first part again, it's F, R, U prime, R prime, U prime, R, U, R prime, F prime. You're just doing a front turn, inserting that pair, turning the top layer once, taking it back out, and then undoing your front turn. So let's get back to where we were, and I can tell you the second part. Now once you're here, the next part, you're going to take this pair, which is an R, and you're going to do a U to take it out, then an R prime, this is our pair, then you're going to do a U prime to put it right back over where it was, and we're going to do a move called sledgehammer, which is we're just going to put it back in a different way. We're going to use an R prime, and we're going to turn the front layer, use an R to rotate this layer back to where it was, and then F prime to undo our turn. So the full one is going to look like this. And that is our Y perm. Now, those 2 parts that we divided that up into, this is kind of some bonus information here. If you don't want to learn this yet, you don't have to, but this is just while I'm here and while it's on your mind, I wanted to say this. If you take those 2 parts and you do them in the opposite order, okay? So instead of starting with the F prime turn, let's just say I take the pair out, put it back in, then I do my front turn and do the first part. What you get here is another case. This is called a T permutation. I need to swap these 2 corners and these 2 edges. The way you recognize this case is you notice a bar here with a block, and then another bar. Okay, so we got 2 bars on either side, and the way you also name it is you're swapping these 2 edges and these 2 corners. So if you were to draw arrows, it looks like a T. So all we're doing is the same steps for the Y perm, just in opposite order. Now notice how at one point in there you actually undo an F turn and then do it again. If you cancel those out, it actually looks right about here. You would just do an R2 instead and continue. And you get your T perm. Also, I failed to explain this. The way you recognize your Y perm, my apologies, is you're going to have a bar on this side, a bar on this side, and a lone corner here. And what it actually does is you're swapping these 2 corners and these 2 edges. So it looks kind of like a Y shape or a weird trident shape. But doing it with this corner in the bottom, or sorry, the front right of the top layer would actually instantly solve that layer. And just while we're also here, what I meant about the OLLs and stuff like that, that first part, get it to the case. If you ever get an orientation of the last layer, this is one of the L shapes when you're doing your OLL. It's a square, another square here with 2 bars. Just doing the first part where you turn the first layer, insert that pair, rotate the top layer, take it back out, and that's going to orient your layer at once. The other part is when you get this T case. You have a T case here with a bar and a bar. If you just do the second part where you take the pair out, put it in a different way, it'll orient your top layer. So within the Y perm is how to do the T perm and 2 of the OLL cases you would have to learn later. So far we've been through both U perms, both J perms, Y perm, and T perm as a bonus. That's 6 of the 21 PLLs, just knowing 2 algorithms. The main other ones you need to know on top of that are whenever you do get headlights on every cases, there's only a handful of cases you will actually have left. Either it's going to be a U perm, or it's going to be an H perm or Z perm. So H perm and Z perm are the last ones I recommend that you learn first. The way you do an H perm, what the case actually looks like is this. You're going to have headlights on every side, but what you'll notice is that these are opposite colors. So white and yellow are across from each other, orange and red are across from each other, white and yellow are across from each other, orange and red are across from each other. You can do this on any side, and yes, it's a new algorithm, but it's actually pretty easy to learn. It's M2, U, M2, U2, M2, U, M2, U2. I kind of like to think about it as a chant. M2U, M2U2, M2U, M2U2, M2U, M2U2, M2U, M2U2. So it's kind of easy to remember. So again, the way you recognize it is opposite headlights on all sides with the edge. Now you do get another case. Remember, this is an H perm that's kind of similar to this. Which is here. You have headlights on every side, but instead of them being opposites, they're adjacent colors or side colors. So instead of white and yellow, you get white and orange and white. Just by looking 2 layers, you can see that it just needs to swap these 2. On the other side, you have something like red and yellow. Now, what you want to do is, the algorithm I use is I hold the adjacent pair so that one is facing me and one is facing to the right. And it's actually similar to the H perm you just learned. You're still going to start with M2, U, M2, and instead of doing U2, we're just going to do a U. Now, to cement what the rest of this algorithm does, if I look at the front layer right now, I can tell that this bar here needs to flip upside down, like that, and this edge needs to come up to the top. So the easiest way to do that is to do an M prime, and then a U2. And then I could do an M to put it back down. But instead of doing that M, if you look at the other side, it's the same exact case. I want this to flip. So, sorry, what I could do is this, and then turn around the cube and do the same move. But we're going to save some movements there. What we're actually going to do is we're going to go M prime, U2. Instead of putting this back down and flipping the cube to the other side, if we just do an M2 move, it puts the other case on the top layer. We can just do a U2 and then an M prime to finish it. So the full algorithm actually looks like this. M2, U, M2, U. Then you just kind of swap the numbers. So instead of doing an M2, we do an M, U2, M2, U2, and we're back to the case. So the full algorithm, M2U, M2U, M prime, U2, M2, U2, M prime. So just from knowing 2 algorithms from the beginning, we have now progressed to both U perms, both J perms, a Y perm, a T as a bonus, and you just learned H perm and Z perm. You now know 8 of the 21 PLLs, and you should be able to do with those the last PLL with a minimum of 2 looks, or a maximum of 2 looks. I'm going to keep this video short. It's already 15 minutes long. So look out for the next part, and I'll teach you the rest of them on how to transition from essentially 2-look PLL to 1-look PLL. But I figured this is a good amount of homework to start with. Thanks, everybody. If you have any questions, give me a comment and let me know. Hope you have a good one. Bye.